Some of the most terrifying fictional monsters and characters in history could actually be explained by real-life medical conditions. So let's discuss and diagnose and see how many you can come up with alongside of me. Okay, Frankenstein spans multiple generations and is one of the most recognizable monsters of all time. The green face, the bolts in the neck, the bad suturing. But I'm going to add another character alongside Frankie Boy, which is Lurch from the Addams family, because they have similar appearances. So I'm killing two monsters with one bone? Scooby snack? I don't know. Frankenstein or Lurch walks into my office. The first thing I'm noticing is their size. Both very tall, well over 6 feet, and both have really pronounced facial features: forehead, jaw, skulls, large hands and feet, thick fingers and toes, deep booming voice.
Wild! You're right.
Barrel chest. Automatically, I'm thinking either gigantism or something called acromegaly. Now, obviously, we know that the origin of Frankenstein is he's made up of body parts sewn together from others and then reanimated by electrical current. So he didn't grow this way, which puts him more in the acromegaly bucket, because only adults who are done with puberty develop this. Lurch, on the other hand, I'm going to say gigantism, because this develops during childhood prior to the growth plates of the bones fusing together before puberty ends. So those growth spurts aren't spurts, they're continuous faucets of uncontrolled and excessive growth. Both conditions result from an overproduction of growth hormone in the pituitary gland. So this tiny little gland right here is just pumping out growth hormones. It's like Miracle-Gro for monsters. In adults with acromegaly, they won't continue to grow in height like a child or a teenager does, but their bones will continue to thicken. They may still be tall, but in contrast, somebody with gigantism can grow to 8 feet tall or more. Treatment includes a combination of medications, surgery, and radiation. A few people with this condition include Andre the Giant, Robert Wadlow, and Richard Kiel, who played the character Jaws in 2 James Bond movies. Wasn't there like a Mandela effect that went on, something about Jaws? Or was it his girlfriend? I think the Mandela effect is supposed to be at the end of one of the movies, he has a girlfriend, and in the movie, which I also remember, she's wearing braces, but apparently this was never the case. And most people that have seen this movie are like, no, she definitely had a mouthful of braces, but no. So yeah, there's a Mandela effect around this character as well. Some of you may also wonder if any professional athletes have it, and as far as I know, and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, you're tested for these genetic conditions and aren't allowed to play in something like the NBA if you have it, because it can affect the heart and other systems, making professional level performance near impossible. Another side note is there are certain ethnicities which are the tallest on Earth. Manute Bol was one of them, and his ethnic group, the Dinka, and then I think there's also the Nilotic people. They're among the tallest populations in the world. So yeah, he was 7 feet 7 inches tall at 18 years old. Pennywise. All right, where to start here? Physically, he's got a giant noggin. So this could be hydrocephalus. Throw in some albinism and a smidge of hyperdontia. Hydrocephalus is the buildup of fluid in cavities called ventricles deep within the brain. And as excess fluid builds up, it exerts a lot of pressure on the skull and can cause the head to grow abnormally large, especially if it's not caught early. This can damage brain tissues and cause a range of issues related to brain function. People with this will have nausea, vomiting, seizures, something called sunset eyes, where they're fixed downward, And this can happen in both infants and adults. With albinism, the body just isn't making enough melanin, and this leads to a very pale appearance, usually light hair and skin. The irises of the eyes are lacking pigment, so when there's really bright light, the pale irises aren't blocking much of it, and a lot of them become extremely light sensitive because of this. And the very light colored eyes can appear red in pictures. Hence, Pennywise living in the sewers. It's nice and dark. We're just going to say that's why and keep on pushing. Hyperdontia is a condition where the person has extra teeth beyond the normal amount. I'd say that's an understatement in this case. And aside from these, honorable mention is dissociative identity disorder or multiple personality disorder and your garden variety psychopathy. Wednesday Addams. Okay, so I debated on whether or not to add Wednesday Addams here because she's not really a monster. She's a kid with really pale skin and weird affect and family. Weird family. But pallor and anemia are jumping out at me. Specifically, hypochromic anemia or hypochromia, which means that the red blood cells have less color than normal. And this usually occurs when there's not enough pigment from the hemoglobin in the red blood cells, which carry oxygen. And a common cause of hypochromia is not enough iron or iron deficiency. If it's not treated, then this can lead to a disorder called, say it with me, iron deficiency anemia. A consistently pale complexion can be a sign of anemia, and this leads to low energy, fatigue, and even a weak or frail appearance. So in a medical context, persistent pallor like hers might warrant some blood work to check for nutritional deficiencies, amongst a million other things. The other diagnosis I'm going to guess is obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is characterized by a preoccupation with orderliness, perfectionism, and control at the expense of being the least bit flexible, open, or efficient. Unlike OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder, there's no P here. This focuses more on rigid control of emotions, rules, and list making. We can also maybe add schizoid personality disorder, which is characterized by a persistent pattern of social detachment and a limited range of emotional expression. People with this often appear emotionally cold, they prefer solitary activities, and they're indifferent to praise or criticism.
I act as if I don't care if people dislike me.
So how am I doing here so far? What do you think? Did I diagnose her correctly? And if you're having fun or learning something, then boop the like button. Go ahead, I won't tell. Hit like. Freddy Krueger. Okay, I mean, physically this one's pretty easy. He's severely scarred and disfigured, which is the result of being burned alive. And when someone is burned this badly, it can lead to contracture deformities, where the skin tightens and restricts muscle and joint movement. His facial disfigurement and leathery skin are typical consequences of third-degree burns and improper healing. But I'm also going to take PTSD for 1000, Ken, because after being burned alive by a mob of angry parents, Freddy could potentially also have this, which might explain some of his proclivities. His violent behavior, obsession with revenge, and inability to move on from the trauma of his death. They all align with PTSD symptoms, flashbacks, emotional numbness, and hyperarousal, apparently. Michael Myers, the iconic silent killer from the Halloween movies. You know him. You do. Even if you grew up in the 2000s, they're still making new ones. He's responsible for one of the most terrifying movie franchises in horror history, characterized by his emotionless demeanor, imposing physical presence, and relentless violence. Out of the gate, I'm going to start with traumatic brain injury, which can result in changes to behavior, cognition, and personality. Damage to specific areas of the brain, such as the frontal lobe, can lead to impulsivity, aggression, emotional flattening, and difficulties with impulse control. Although Michael's specific injuries aren't always clear, his resilience to physical harm suggests some form of brain injury or neurological abnormality. Psychopathy too. We're definitely adding that ingredient into this creepy cake. And this is a subset of antisocial personality disorder, which is characterized by extreme callousness, lack of empathy. Superficial charm is also part of this, but I don't know that I would associate that with Mikey here very easily. Psychopaths are often highly calculating and lack any sense of guilt for their actions. So kind of think more like Ted Bundy. You wouldn't exactly put him in line with Michael Myers as far as charm goes, but Ted Bundy is a perfect representation of the charming psychopath. But I'm not done yet. Catatonia would also explain this character too. This is a complex neuropsychiatric condition that you'll see abnormal movements, lack of speech, and unresponsiveness to their environment. Catatonic patients can exhibit stupor, they're rigid, and they'll have repetitive but nonsensical movements. Some patients may alternate between periods of immobility and sudden agitation or violence. I mean, he's eerily silent and almost statue-like. He's got slow, deliberate movements, his lack of verbal communication, and his ability to remain motionless for long periods are highly suggestive of somebody with catatonia. Jason Voorhees. All right, I couldn't talk about Michael Myers without talking about Jason. Camp Crystal Lake. I've been there because the original movies were filmed in New Jersey, Hope, Warren County, Blairstown. The camp scenes were shot at a working Boy Scout camp, ironically. Camp Nobibosco. Anyway, it's in Hardwick, New Jersey. And super fun fact, it's still standing and still operates as a summer camp. So family fun to be had for all. So here's another giant tree trunk of a man. So just yell it out when you know it, right? Gigantic. Also going to say there's some hydrocephalus possibly, because in early depictions, particularly when he's shown as a child, he's portrayed with a notably enlarged head and facial deformities. This could suggest that. And then antisocial personality caps off this assessment. It goes without saying, but depending on which version you watch, he supposedly drowned and was then reanimated. So anyone else here making the connection between Frankenstein and Jason? I am. Although Jason is a murderous killer, but Frankenstein, I tend to think, was maybe just misunderstood. A gentle giant, if you will. Though I'm embarrassed to admit I've never seen the original Frankenstein. So I could be completely off with this. Or maybe I'm recalling how he was portrayed in Penny Dreadful. I don't know. Maybe. Penny Dreadful though, awesome. Good stories. They take like fictional horror characters and kind of round them out and give them more of a backstory and see some humanity to them. Very cool concept. I wish they kept going with it. I actually dated somebody who acted in it. Yeah. Slenderman. Of creepypasta meme fame. Tall, thin, spindly arms and legs, no face or features, very pale, tight skin. This would have to be Marfan's syndrome and maybe some Scleroderma. Marfan syndrome is a genetic disorder that affects the body's connective tissues, which supports organs, bones, and muscles. Characteristics include being tall and thin with long limbs, fingers, toes, and an abnormally curved spine, exceptional flexibility of joints. Scleroderma, on the other hand, is a chronic autoimmune disease that causes the skin to thicken and harden. Early signs include fingers or toes that turn blue or even white in response to cold temperatures, also known as Raynaud's phenomena. Hair loss, skin that's darker or lighter than normal is also seen with this condition. So I nailed that. I did.
Be humble.
Dracula. I had to. I had to put nose for thirsty in here. Vlad the Napper, the Midnight Mosquito, Mr. Pale and Proud himself on this list. So vampires are nocturnal creatures who drink blood, avoid sunlight, have a fear of holy symbols, garlic, etc. And they're depicted with pasty white skin and fangs. I'm just setting the scene here. My diagnosis is porphyria, which is a group of genetic disorders that affect the production of heme, which is a component of red blood cells. One type, erythropoietic protoporphyria, it's going to be a blooper, causes extreme sensitivity to sunlight, and if exposed, it leads to blisters, severe pain, and scarring. In fact, porphyria is sometimes referred to as the vampire disease. Consider the symptoms of someone with this and prepare to be fascinated. First is extreme sensitivity to sunlight, leading to the facial disfigurement, blackened skin, and hair growth. But in addition to all of that, repeated attacks of this disease cause the gums to recede, exposing the teeth, which lead them to look like fangs. Also, the urine of people with porphyria is dark red. And back then, people didn't know any better. So the easiest assumption, they were drinking blood.
I'm not doing that.
In fact, some doctors even recommended drinking blood to compensate for the defect in their red blood cells. But this recommendation was for animal blood only. It's more than likely that these people that only went out after dark were judged to be hunting for blood, and then their fangs led to the folklore about vampires. Now, the aversion to garlic, listen to this. The sulfur content of garlic could bring on severe attacks of porphyria, leading to extreme pain. So I would avoid garlic if I had this. So would you. And then the final nail in the coffin, fear of crucifixion. So during the Spanish Inquisition, 600 vampires were reportedly burned at the stake. Many of them were innocent sufferers of porphyria. So they had good reason to fear the Christian faith and Christian symbols. Fascinated? You're fascinated. Just admit it. You are. The zombie. Zombies are undead creatures. They're typically reanimated corpses or people infected with a virus that make them crave human flesh. They're actively decaying, slow-moving, and lacking in higher cognitive function. For this one, I'm going to give a primary diagnosis and then two differential diagnoses. The first is Cotards Syndrome, better known as walking corpse syndrome. It's kind of a cop-out, I know, but whatever. People with this rare psychiatric disorder believe they're dead. They're decaying and they're missing vital organs. And they can exhibit behaviors associated with death, such as neglecting personal hygiene. And public service announcement. You're not actually dead, and the people around you can detect that if you decide that a shower is unnecessary. Some won't eat or drink either. Toxoplasmosis, or brain parasites, is my next differential. Certain parasites like Toxoplasma gondii are known to alter brain function and behavior. Infected animals show decreased fear and cognitive dysfunction, a bit like a zombie. Some have speculated that if such parasites were to infect humans, they could exhibit zombie-like symptoms such as aggression, confusion, and lack of coordination. We're still falling short of the eating human flesh part, but I guess that could be part of the aggression. My last differential diagnosis is rabies. The virus spreads through a break in your skin that encounters the saliva of an infected animal, most often from a bite. Once bitten, you can get a vaccine that stops the infection, but if you're not treated right away, you could experience increased aggression and agitation, restlessness, hallucinations, muscle twitching, racing heart or tachycardia, hyperventilation, and delirium. Once these clinical signs appear, the disease is nearly always fatal. An interesting fact, in 1997, a study in The Lancet analyzed the cases of 3 individuals from Haiti whose communities had identified them as zombies. One was a 30-year-old woman who had allegedly quickly died after becoming ill, but then her family saw her walking around 3 years later. Another was an 18-year-old man who had died and then reemerged 18 years later at a cockfight. And the final case concerned another woman who also had died at the age of 18, but was spotted again 13 years after that event. There are certain religions and cultures that strongly believe in things like this. And in the 80s, a Harvard botanist discovered a neurotoxin found in animals like the pufferfish, created the appearance of death, minus the permanence. Davis described his findings in a book called The Serpent and the Rainbow. I read it, excellent book. But this was also later turned into a horror movie by Wes Craven, of course. The Joker. All right, the Joker's signature exaggerated grin appears to be the result of a Glasgow smile, which is a wound where the corners of the mouth are cut and scarred to create a permanent, wide, creepy grin. And this disfigurement is typically caused by trauma and is often seen in violent attacks. Vitiligo is also in there with the Joker. His pale white skin is often depicted as the result of chemical burns. And his bleached, like patchy complexion could also be linked to vitiligo. Is it vitiligo or vitiligo? I don't know. But anyway, this is a condition where the skin loses pigment in certain areas, leading to white patches. He also displays many traits associated with antisocial personality disorder, including a blatant disregard for societal rules, norms. He lacks empathy. He's manipulative, deceitful, impulsive, and a willingness to harm others without remorse. All key characteristics of ASPD.
Why so serious?
He finds pleasure in causing chaos and destruction without clear motive beyond creating suffering. I'm sure there have been assessments already done on the Joker's personality disorders by people who know his backstory in detail, which I'd love to hear in the comments. Medicine back in the Victorian era, when many of these characters were created, was also very scary. Maybe even scarier than these characters, honestly. And I talk about them here. Take two, because I forgot to put the mic on. All right. Oh. And my eye is tearing because I never aligned my waterline, but I did now. So it looks like Wednesday's crying. And Wednesday kind of is because, all right. Hi, mailman. What you got for me today? Bye, mailman. Oh, oh my God, these, it's a great wig. These little tiny baby hairs are just tickling my face everywhere. It's a very nice wig. It actually kind of looks like real hair though, which is somewhat disturbing. But yeah. Oh God. What do you think? Should I do Stay Healthy and Lucid is Wednesday? Stay Healthy and Lucid. Stay healthy. What would she say? She wouldn't say, oh my God. She wouldn't say stay healthy and lucid. She would say remain healthy and lucid. Let's try that. Remain healthy and lucid. Remain healthy and lucid. I'm not feeling that. Will that be weird if I do it as Wednesday Addams? The whole sign off? Probably. Ask me if I care. Okay. One more round. One more round. Okay. And you better all hit like after I put this ridiculous getup on. Oh my God, it's like attack of the baby hair. I think that's enough. I think they'll get the picture. Okay. All right, it's time for Wednesday to take a shower. And I will see all of you fine folk in the next one. When that will be, hard to say. It's been a little rough to stay on schedule lately. But maybe I'll do a live next. And we have some exciting changes coming in 2025. Second channel. Yeah.